If you've ever worked much with dates in JavaScript, you know how they can be a little bit frustrating. They can do strange things. They can have really important things that are missing, like the names of the months. That doesn't exist. If you're working with months, it's a zero-based array, which arrays in JavaScript are, but when you think of dates, you don't think of the 0 month being January. You think of January as the first month. So moment.js was a library that was created to help address a lot of these concerns. Then moment time zone came around for working with times in different time zones, being able to convert back and forth. So this was kind of an add-on, but it required that you have the extra download file with all the data about the time zones. Luxon, this is the new version. So Luxon is the library that isn't replacing Moment. MomentJS is backward compatible to very early JavaScript. Luxon is one designed for modern browsers. And one of the biggest differences is the fact that it has support for the JavaScript International object. So in MDN, the International object, you can see here, this is the support across the browsers. There's very good support. There's a listing here with Android that says no for a bunch of things, but that's having to do more with the old Android web view that was in Android KitKat 4.4, 4.3, 4.2, and before that. So starting with Android 5, which was Lollipop, the web view became something that could be updated separately. And that really improved things for Android with the web and support for web features and JavaScript features. So we have now this international object. That means there's built-in support in the browsers for things like time zones and converting back and forth and converting to locale strings. So that's awesome. That's there. And that's what Luxon tries to do. Is they didn't want to break moment.js, so one of the guys who worked on the project started the Luxon project, and he started to add in support for all these new things, the international object, being able to set locale strings, convert between different languages for the times. So that's Luxon. Luxon is the evolution of moment.js. They didn't want to break Moment, so they started a new project. If you are just supporting browsers that have been around for the last couple of years that have support for the international object, then this really is the library that you should be using instead of Moment. All right, so how does it work? Well, let's take a look. There is one primary object. There's a bunch of other objects at the top level of Luxon, but the one that you'll be using the most is called datetime. In your code, luxon.datetime. This gives you the datetime object, access to it. All you have to do is you download and include the minified Luxon script, and now you've got access to all the functionality as well as the ability to convert between time zones or between different locale strings. Lots of fantastic functionality in here. This is a shortcut. You don't have to do this in your code. You can, if you want, prefix all the commands with Luxon. So right here, I'm doing datetime.local. This is kind of the equivalent of doing a date.now or new date in just regular vanilla JavaScript. If you say new date with a capital D, you call that method, you get a date object that represents the current time on your computer. This is the Luxon equivalent of that, datetime.local. This gives you a date object or a datetime object that represents the current date and time on the user's computer. Now, as a shortcut, this is kind of something they recommend, even in their own guide, they recommend doing this. Create your own variable for datetime and then make that equivalent to luxon.datetime. You can do it for the other primary objects. There is a datetime object. There's also a duration object, an interval object, an info object, a settings object. There's several of these primary objects, and you can create a shortcut for each one if you want. I'm going to try to quickly go through and explain some of the more common features in here. I'll provide links to all the documentation, the references, and so on as we go through this. I have links to the main objects. So here's the date time link, the duration one, the interval, the info. So if you need to look something up in the reference, this is how you go about that. Now, when you go into the Luxon website, there is a guide. So this will explain a lot of the things that I'm talking about in this video. And there's also a reference. Now, most people, when they start out with a new library or something like that, a new API, they will go to the guide. This is what you read to get up and started. Once you're beyond that, though, once you know the basics, I really recommend that you start looking into the reference instead of the guide. The reference is the list of all the individual features, all the methods, all the properties, events in some cases, all the things that you would need to really understand and be able to make the most out of a library or an API that you're using. So I will be coming back to look at this a few times through this video. Something, if you're not familiar with, static members, static methods, and members, what do those things mean? Well, this is something that you can learn as you start to get familiar with the reference. When you see something that's static, what that means is this is going to be, if it's a static member, that's a property. You can think of a lot of these as if you're declaring constants. So written all in caps. To use this date time underscore full, I would, because it's static, I would put date time like this, date time dot date time underscore full. That's what a static thing is. So if I were to console.log, or here, I'll write it out on the page itself. I don't think, yeah, I'll comment out this so it's not writing it on the page. So output dot text content equals luxon dot datetime dot, and here it is, datetime underscore full. Datetime, all caps, underscore full. And we'll convert it to string. All right, we'll come back in here. We'll reload our page. Oh, yeah. So let's do this. JSON.stringify instead of toString. There we are. So here's the object. This is an object that represents kind of a built-in format. So year, month, day, hour, and all these different properties, what they have is a value. And this is going to say numeric. So the year is a number. Month, the default format for that is long. That means the entire month, the name of the month written out in full. Numeric for day. An alternative for this is 2-digit. So if you had a 2-digit day, you're going to get 2 digits. Numeric for the day is just going to give you 1 or 2. So if 9 was the day, it would just be the 9. If you said 2-digit, you're going to get 09. That's the difference between them. Time zone name, short. So there's different values that explain what the formatting is. And that's what we're doing here. These are all shortcuts for a specific format. Datetime full with seconds, datetime huge. So you can see there's a long list of built-in ones. And really, these are probably going to be all the ones that you ever need. You may want at some point to just get the day or the month, and we can do that. There's a day property, a month property. But if you want to format a date for people, this is going to be what you want to use. Okay, so let's comment that out again. Now, once you have your datetime object inside the Luxon object, like we had here, luxon.datetime, I make the shortcut for datetime. Now, datetime.local is going to get me the current time and date. So this object right here, this is an instance of datetime. Coming back into the reference, static were things that you would write datetime in front of. When you get returned a date object from local, this becomes an instance. So you're no longer using the static methods. For example, here, today.get. I'm getting the month. That's from the entire date object, just give me the month. That's what's being passed into this variable m, just the month. So if we were to write that out, console, or let's do the output.text content again, equals m. There we are, 7. That is the month. It's July. So this returns to me that number, 7, so I can write it out. But I'm not saying datetime.get. I'm saying today. I'm working with an instance. So I'm working with just a method. So static members, you'd say datetime dot whatever the name of the property is. Static methods, datetime dot from format explain, from HTTP. All these different methods, and we'll find local. Here it is, right here. So public, static. Public, anybody can call it. Static means that you put datetime in front of it, or luxon.datetime. Luxon.datetime.local is going to call this method. Now, members, these are not static ones. These are the ones where I put today or f or m, some variable dot the property name. And here's all the different pieces of the month. So day, days in month, days in year, hour, and so on. Lots and lots of these properties to get all the different bits and pieces. Zone name, you want to find out what the current time zone name is for the current object. We could do that right here. Let tz equal today, because it's not static, so it's an instance method, or instance property rather. Instance member, zone name, today.zone name. And then we'll write that out, tz, come back into the browser, refresh this. There we are. This is the name of the time zone that I am currently in. So that's the locale that's set on this date object, today. And method summary, public methods. These are not static ones. So if I wanted to call any of these, I would have a variable in front of them because they're not static. So today.diff, today.diff now. This is going to return the difference between the date time in the variable that goes in front of this and the current time. You can see here at the end, colon duration. This is what it's going to return. It's going to return to me a duration object. So that's how you use the reference. And we can click on any one of these. It'll scroll down the page and show me examples. Here's some code samples, some examples of how you would use it. This example, this first one right here, so datetime object.utc. It's going to take this and create a datetime object, which is on this day in the UTC time zone. And that's what this T00000Z means. So this is in Greenwich Mean Time, the universal time constant. So the time zone is being set as Greenwich, England, and the time is 0, so it's midnight on that date. To ISO is going to give me the ISO formatted version of this date. So I have a few examples here of writing out different dates with different locales and settings. So we talked about up here using datetime full, these constants. These are the static ones. This is most of what you want. If there is something else that you want specifically, what we can do is call toLocaleString. Two main methods, toLocaleString and toISO. If you are writing out dates for people, like in my comment right here, then I recommend using toLocaleString. You can specify one of the formats, like this, like datetime_full, or you can create your own format. Just create an object, like I did here. Month, I want the full name. Day, I want a 2-digit day. And that's all that I've defined in this format. That's what I'm passing into locale string. It is going to give me a date string with these two things in it. And then if you want, optionally, I don't have to have this in the middle. You can see right here, today.toLocale string with absolutely nothing in it. I could do that. Let's do it with nothing in it just to see the defaults. Come back in here, refresh. There it is. So here is with nothing set at all in terms of format. It's just using the locale from my computer, from my browser, the locale that I've got set. Here it is, month, day, year. So this is the default, the ENUS format. That's what's being used by default here. Now, instead of that, I'm going to specify that I want to use F, which is my format object. So the month and the day, those two things, but I'm setting the locale to German. Come back here. So this is German, just with the month and the day. There it is. So using the German locale, 27.Juli. This is the German date. We can change dates by taking the instance and saying .set, passing in an object. This will let us change the month or the day or the year, whatever we want. We can define whatever parts we want in the object. Now this doesn't change the today object. What it does is it returns a new date time object. So new DT. If I take that and I paste it in here, we run this again. There it is. So 27th of December in German, because I set it to DE. If we want to do that new date, but set the locale to, well, here's English Canadian. We'll do that, December 27. If I change this to FRCA, so French Canadian, that's how it comes out. So it's the same object. This is the day, and we change the month right here with this set command to give us this new object, new DT. And we can just play with the locale to output that. If I wanted to see what it is in ISO, let's do the new DT object to ISO. This would be if I'm working with a computer. Refresh, and here it is. This is the ISO date. So December 27th, 2018 at 1:14 p.m. in the afternoon, 53 seconds, 0.347 seconds, minus 0.5. So this is the difference between the UTC time, the Greenwich Mean Time, and my time zone. So I am 5 hours behind Greenwich Mean Time. That's what this is. So once again, toLocale string if you're writing out a date or part of a date for people to read. toISO is great if you want to use it to pass to another computer and you want to make sure that all the information is there and it's formatted in a way that the computer can understand. So if you were uploading a date to a PHP or a Node script and you wanted them to interpret the date properly, toISO is what I would use. Now there's lots of other options. 2millis. This gives you the millisecond timestamp, the Unix epoch timestamp. Great for working with JavaScript. There is a toJavaScript Date, which will give you the JavaScript Date object out of this library. You want the JSON version of it. You want BSON, so you're working with Mongo, and your Mongo uses BSON instead of JSON. We could do that. Let's do a JSON one here just to see what it looks like. So instead of this first line here, we're now asking for, save that. Oh, it's giving me the same format. Let's try to object. There we go. That's a better one. So there's the object itself being returned. Oh, right, JSON. Sorry. This isn't giving me a JSON object. What this is giving me is a string that could be used inside of JSON. So if there's any characters that JSON wouldn't be happy with, it converts those. But this is still a string format. Right. Okay, so ISO, back to that standard that works well for the computer. to millis. If I run that again, there it is. There's the current millisecond timestamp for the Unix epoch. But 2s, so I'll leave it in there for this. Now, I know this is getting a little bit long. I don't want to take too much time for this. Durations, this is a generic period of time. And what that means is 3 months, 5 years, 12 minutes, 12 minutes and 14 seconds. That is a generic time frame. We're not giving, hey, you know what? Thursday, the 12th of June, 1963. I'm not giving a specific time like that. A duration is a period of time, but you don't know the start or the end date for that time. That's what a duration is. You can create durations from an ISO time period, from milliseconds, from an amount of milliseconds, from an object where you define the different parts. Or you can just pass in days, minutes, years. Oh, sorry, these are properties of the duration object. These are instance properties. So we can say, okay, give me the number of days in the duration, number of minutes in the duration, number of years in the duration, or give me the duration back written out as days or as minutes, years, so on. You can give any unit you want, and the as method will give you back that. Equals. So you can take one duration. Let's say if I had, so create a duration, create one called dir. So luxon duration dot from millis. So I'm going to create a duration object from an amount of milliseconds. So let's say 20,000, which is 20 seconds. And I'll create another one. We'll call it herder luxon.duration from millis, and we'll say it's 15,000 milliseconds. So 20 seconds versus 15 seconds. These are two different durations. Then I can, here we'll do warn, so it's a different color so we can see it showing up in the console over here. And I'll say dir equals herder. There we are. And we run that. False, which is what we'd expect, because 20 seconds and 15 seconds are not the same amount of time. Now if I change the second one to be 20 as well, and I run this, true. That's what we're getting back here. So these two durations are the same amount. We can also call, there's a minus or a plus method that you can call to take a duration and add amount of time or subtract an amount of time from it to create a different duration. And then interval, same sort of idea. The difference between a duration and an interval is the duration was that generic one, just 3 hours, 5 minutes. That's a duration. Interval, you have a container with two endpoints in it. So they call it a half-open interval of time. Basically, it's like a duration, but you're defining what the endpoints are. So you're saying, here's the start point or the end point. So you're providing a specific time date object, and then you're also giving a duration. So a specific moment in time. Let's say Friday, July 27th at 1 p.m. in 2018. So there's my start point, and then I give a duration of 1 hour. So that's an interval. It's giving me that specific period of time. You can get an interval by providing two date times. So you give it one time date object and another time date object, so a start and an end. Or you can define before or after by providing a start with a duration or an ending point and a duration. Equals, you want to compare one interval with another. So if you've got, like we did up here, two interval objects, you can compare them to see if they are the same interval. You can find out if two intervals overlap each other. You get a true or false. So one interval overlaps another interval. A but's end or a but's start, meaning the start time and the end time for two intervals are the same. So is it touching the end or is it touching the start? And engulfs, does one interval exist entirely inside of another interval? A couple of properties, what's the start, what's the end? is it valid, meaning it's not a negative, so the end comes after the start. Last thing, info. The info object lets you find things out about time zone or change things about the time zone. So my today object from up above, up here, there it is. So I got the current time for today on my computer, and then I set the time zone as America, Regina. I did that because Saskatchewan, a province in Canada, does not have daylight savings time, and I wanted to show the hasDST method. And that's the last bit right here. I'll refresh this. False, hasDST. So that time zone does not have DST, so it comes back false. And then it's checking, is it a valid IANA zone, which is the Internet Assigned Number Authority, I believe. They look after things like time zones and IP addresses, domain names, stuff like that, I believe. So it checks to see if this is a valid one within that list. If you're ever looking for that list, I'll include this in the description as well. This Wikipedia page, it's great. It's got a full list of all of them, and it tells you whether or not something's a canonical, meaning this is the name that you're supposed to use, or an alias. So there's names that are aliases for other ones. It's also providing in here the difference in the time zone from UTC time. There it is, the UTC offset, and the UTC offset for daylight savings time. So these are all provided inside of here. Great list, very useful to have. I will also include the link to the JavaScript international object from the MDN reference, and the can I use for the international object, which is a little bit better table than the one that's on MDN, just showing where the support for the international object is in the different browsers. I will include the references for the different date time objects. These are the primary objects in the date time. Those are the ones that I've got inside the code here. I will include this code just for you. And I will include also the link to the reference for Luxon. You can always find it from momentjs.com, the primary page. But there, that should give you everything that you need to get up and started working with Luxon. Fantastic library, works really well, works just as well, if not better, than the MomentJS library. It was evolved from that, but it also includes all the international stuff and the time zone stuff. So it's like Moment, but better. So I hope you start using it. Please try it out as soon as possible. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. If you found this useful, please share it. And as always, thanks for watching.